We have had many Celtics offseason discussions over the last week, but the one topic that just won't go away, whether or not to trade Marcus Smart. Yesterday, our own Brian Scalabrine was asked, would he trade Marcus Smart? He was asked that on WEEI's Merloni, Fourier, and Mego.
No. The identity of the Celtics team is defensive versatility. And unless you name me a point guard that can block out Joel Embiid, I make it really simple for people. You can worry about your playmaking, your shooting. You can even say, guard this guy or guard that guy. I'll just put one on you, right? Marcus Smart can block out Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. If you find me any point guard that can do that, then I'll be open to it. But until I don't find guys like that. That's what the identity of this team is.
Well, Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix agrees, tweeting this: I was as critical as anyone last summer of Boston's decision to make Marcus Smart the starting point guard, but he succeeded in every way. As discussed in the pod, it's crazy to even suggest the Celtics look for someone else. He uses Marcus's Twitter handle here. We'll grow into that position. And that is where we begin our deep dive as we welcome in former Providence head coach, current basketball analyst Tim Welsh, along with Eddie House and Chris Forsberg. Tim, is Marcus Smart untradeable? Are you in the camp of Chris Mannix and Chris Forsberg and Brian Scalabrine?
Come on, Scal. No one blocks out anymore. That's the old school. That's back when I coached or played. No one blocks out in the NBA. You just go get the ball. And Marcus Smart can go get the ball. We know that. But he's not untradeable. He's not an all-star. I mean, if a guy's not an all-star, he's not untradeable. I mean, you have to look at what you're getting in return. That's obvious. But the league is an offense-first league, and certainly he plays great defense, the defensive player of the year. We know that. But when you watch him in the playoffs, does that defense transcend into wins? Did it stop Jimmy Butler? Did it stop Steph Curry? No, they're the elite players, but if you're the elite defender, the best in the league, you've got to be able to go against those guys and at least slow them down a little, and he didn't show me that in the playoffs.
Do you question if he really is an elite defender?
I think his defense is overrated at times. He makes the great plays. He makes the toughness plays. Sometimes he gambles way too much, in my opinion. At times, Steph Curry made him look like he was in quicksand, especially in Game 6. But listen, everybody's going to have trouble guarding Steph Curry. I like Marcus Smart. I like him. I've done his games in college. I like him as a person. I think he gives all. But at times, I think offensively, he thinks he's better than he is. Like in the Milwaukee series, Game 5, the Miami Game 7. He was on the bench for the Game 1 win against the Warriors in the last quarter. So at times, he still doesn't know his role.
Who would you trade him for before we let our fellow lovers of Marcus Smart?
Well, that's when it becomes more complicated. Yeah. And Chris knows the deep dive of the salary caps and all that better than I do. Dejounte Murray, his name is out there as well. I mean, can you go sign a Jalen Brunson? I don't know. If you move money around, you certainly have to have a guy, but you have a lot of money tied up in that point guard position. And between him and Derek White, you basically have a max contract point guard. Do you have a max contract player, though?
Oh, Eddie House. Chris, I know we've...
No. Let Eddie.
I'm going to let... Only because you wrote a whole column about it yesterday. You got into an argument yesterday with Phil Perry about it. Eddie, what do you think about what Tim Welsh has to say, Coach Welsh over here, about Marcus Smart?
Oh, he's on mute.
Oh, tell him he's muted.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
As far as offensively, I'm back. As far as offensively, he is limited offensively. He's not the greatest offensive point guard, but defensively, with all of the things that Scal highlighted, where he can box out multiple big guys, he can switch out. We've seen him in that series against, how many point guards can switch out against Giannis and actually hold their own? Steph Curry, that's a different breed. We're talking about a top 10 player that ever played the game. He's going to make everybody look suspect and look like they really can't defend. But his hustle is invaluable. His leadership is invaluable. And if you're not able to get something that supersedes what he brings on the defensive end, I just don't see how it's any way you can trade him. Again, is he not tradable? That's not the case. I think it's only two guys on this team that are untradeable, and that is the two J's, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But if there's not something out there that looks perfect, like for this team, to put them over the hump, I don't go backwards to make a trade for somebody that has us there that's not going to put us over the hump. Now, if it's somebody that's going to put us over the top, then, yeah, you can make a trade for him. But right now, I don't see that out there.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, so I think that's my big thing is that everyone loves to say this idea of, oh, trade Marcus Smart. And I kind of get it, right? Like, you're not trading Jason Tatum. You're not trading Jaylen Brown. You're not trading Robert Williams on a sweetheart of a deal. You're not going to pile all the assets you need to put on Al Horford to move him out in the final year of his deal. So what do you got left? It's a bunch of bench guys that probably no one wants, and Marcus Smart. So he's your most tradable assets. My problem is no one has an idea of what can actually make you better. And so if you come to me and say, hey, here's the roadmap to adding a De'Aaron Fox or like some young point guard that can grow with the Jays, okay, I'm all ears. But you don't have that for me. What you have is Marcus Smart, who is invaluable to your team and way more valuable to you than he is on the outside. I think the other thing at play here is we're so hung up on a 6-game sample size that we've lost the 110 game. And Marcus Smart, over the totality of the season, was not only phenomenal defensively, but the numbers bore out that the Celtics offense, especially over the last 35 games when everybody was healthy, was a much different team. Now, I, as much as anybody, wish they could have carried that into the postseason, but the level of competition goes up. It's tougher against the Bucks. It's tougher against Miami. It's tougher against the Golden State Warriors. And so I just think we have to understand that, like, hey, Marcus Smart wasn't the reason they lost the finals. The bench didn't do enough, and if you're talking about the players that performed way below expectation, I think you have to look at your superstars before you look at Marcus Smart. Could Marcus Smart have been better? Absolutely. But that was for the totality of the team.
So both of you guys said if there was a perfect fit, right? Like if it was the right move, you would make it. Dejounte Murray is a name that Coach Welsh brought up. Is that a name that would be a fit that you would trade Marcus Smart for? Chris is making a bitter beer face. Eddie House, how do you feel about him?
I think it's a give and take. You get more offense, right? Now, that more offense, does that take away from the Jays, right? Does that take away from Jaylen Brown? Does that take away from Jason Tatum? It possibly does, but you lose defense. You lose that voice. And you got to think how close these guys are. Now you also lose a little bit of that brother camaraderie that you had, and now they're going to have to reset and say, okay, we got to bring another guy in, we got to relearn this person's personality, we got to relearn his quirks, and we got to understand how he really is. I think that when you look at it, like Marcus Smart is just, he's learning how to be a point guard, right? And so naturally, he's not going to make the right decisions. He's going to try some stuff because it's not been his natural position throughout his career. So you have to live with some of those growing pains. And can you sit back and say, I can live with some of those growing pains, and we went to the finals with those growing pains, as opposed to let's make a trade for somebody that we have to incorporate into a whole new identity, have to have them change maybe how they play the game and view the game, and will that work? It's almost better to grasp, and Pat Riley used to say this, and I always quote him because he's one of my the greatest coaches I've ever played for, man. The grass sometimes always seems greener on the other side until you cross over there and you see it's nothing but sand and nothing for anything to eat, you know? So it's be careful of what you wish for sometimes.
Well, I agree with Eddie in that regard. Chemistry is certainly an issue, and I think that's Brad Stevens' greatest strength. He understands chemistry. He understands how to put a team together, and there's no way he's going to bring anybody in here that doesn't fit. Dejounte Murray has been a good defensive player while he's been in San Antonio. I believe he made an all-defensive team in one of his years. So he has good length. He would fit in as far as a guy that has length and can switch off. He doesn't have that toughness to guard a big guy, of course. But that's what I like about Brad Stevens and Mike Zarin, his assistant. They are going to look at it analytically, and they're not afraid to make moves if they think the fit is there.